Now he has an AI system that literally is 6 different AI agents responding to customers, booking appointments, putting people into revenue-driven solutions. And he's dropped that $100,000 of payroll and moved over to being what I would consider a immensely more profitable business. People in the 1900s didn't want to leave the horse world because familiarity is one piece, but the reason why they really didn't want to leave it is they didn't believe the car would last, and they didn't see a future with it. So one of the most interesting things I've seen is a level of articulation of the things that happen in a very large GLP-1 doctor that I had who has replaced 11 people by using AI. He was paying over $100,000. And now he has an AI system that literally is 6 different AI agents responding to customers, booking appointments, putting people into revenue-driven solutions. And he's dropped that $100,000 of payroll and moved over to being what I would consider a immensely more profitable business.
So we need to sit with that for a second.
There's
So
so
how
much to
much,
absorb in
like,
that.
so how much is this guy saving, Matt? Like, so he's saving.
Yeah,
6 payrolls.
it's basically taking an entire infrastructure of operations, call center, deployment, sales, copywriting, all of it. It's all being now done. And again, you look at the operational flow of business. He will do $650,000 this month in recurring revenue. And his profitability, when I first spoke with him, was minus $10,000 a month. Now it is closer to $200,000 to $300,000 a month. So these are the things that people don't necessarily see on the outside because they see AI as sort of the ChatGPT world, but there are agentic levels of understanding of this business that are so deep that they're affecting not just influence of people who understand how to like internally operationalize a business, but the customers are actually getting better answers. And that's the scary part that everybody should understand is that the AIs learn, repeat, and learn again. And then they become more adaptable because their conditional responses are becoming more intelligent, not standardized. And I think that's the big challenge that people are going to face as we move forward in this space is like, how are you going to catch up to this as your business deploys itself and grows and goes forward? How are you going to take advantage of these cost savings and also making your customers have a better experience?
I think that's one of the key things, Matt, you mentioned is that it's not only reducing FTE and costs, but it's actually an improved experience for the customer. I think there's a little bit of skepticism about that in the outside world of how good is that experience or that transaction going to be against an AI versus, a customer support agent or, the usual interaction with a person. So that's really interesting that case study you have with your client.
Well, the reality is that we're facing is I'll call it the car versus the horse. There are a lot of people who still want to ride a horse today. But the car has been developed 10 years ago, and now it's becoming interesting because it's making life easier. Now, people in the 1900s didn't want to leave the horse world because familiarity is one piece, but the reason why they really didn't want to leave it is they didn't believe the car would last, and they didn't see a future with it. They saw it as like, okay, it's a temporary thing. I could take one car ride, but whatever, it's not really that big of a deal. Now, I think if you look at this today, and I'll put this into layman's terms, we all listen to different podcast shows. And I heard something very interesting yesterday, which, if you want to go look back in time, I think this is sort of a watershed moment. There's a podcast called The Compound, which is a fairly well-known New York driven, let's just call it stock market analysis, whatever you want to put that words into people's mouths about what they use it for. But it's a talk show really about, the industry of finance. And one of the guests was saying, this weekend I had to get my carpets cleaned, or, equivalent of getting something cleaned in the house. And he said, I called up over the weekend, AI answered, it had a good conversation with what I needed. I knew it was AI because it wasn't obviously human, but it was super helpful, and it booked my date, it booked the time, and it now put me into their system to remind me, and I'm getting my carpets cleaned and some other upholstery cleaned because I spoke with an agent, an AI agent. And that's sort of like when you start to see things like that happening, when people are talking about it being successfully migrating from humans to AI because the experience is better. Now you can imagine if that wasn't hooked up over the weekend, the phone rang, it went to voicemail, someone called back Tuesday, they might have had a bad experience because they called back and they didn't know who the person was, and there wasn't any inference of how the experience was because they hadn't actually asked the right questions. They just called up and said, hey, what time can I book you? We're seeing this across the boards. I can get into more details, but why I mean that's a watershed moment is that people are talking about it.
Hmm.
And that's a big difference.
Well, lots to get into.
Sure.
So Matt, you've built and exited multiple companies the past 15 years, from Customer Bloom, then to Practice Bloom, and then now Profit Engines. What's the through line here?
It's a good question, and I get asked this quite a bit. And I think about it as something that's maybe a characteristic of what I've always learned. So back in the day, even before I started my own business, I was always involved in trying to help people. And that was a little bit different in the space that I was before I entered the marketing world, but it was somewhat similar because I was actually involved in helping clients with telecommunications solutions and systems and technology. And a lot of it was very technical. It was connecting the dots. Um, and I can remember the days of working with some of the Fortune 500 companies because I was working for Sprint T-Mobile at the time, managing a huge territory. Like it was a $50 million territory across New York and the metro area. And we were implementing Blackberries and iPhones for all the corporate folks. And we're talking thousands and thousands of devices, but we were connecting to their systems and structure to get them a solution that would relate so that their devices would have the right technology and be implemented. So when someone gets handed a phone, it has the proper logins and credentials and applications that the corporate people would want. And those things became very relevant when I moved to marketing because I realized that the things that people want today, they just want their life to be easier. They want three things. They want to make more money. They want to have less pressure on their life so they don't have to make more decisions. And they want somebody who can help them that isn't a, let's just call it fly by night environment. So I sort of have that limited sort of like thin line of being able to talk both at a technical level and talk at a Joe Sixpack level and understand the nuances around business development, operation systems, sales, and all the rest of the sort of pieces that need to be implemented. And that's really why I think the line from the original company I started, which was Customer Bloom, which evolved to Practice Bloom, which now is Profit Engines, and through different processes of selling these businesses, it's still the same thing, is that I can have conversations with most people to understand their problems. And I get excited about becoming the solution provider because I have enough knowledge that either I can do the solution with my team or I'll know someone or some third party that can solve the problem if it's above my pay grade, right? So there are certainly things that I've done that are super complicated, but there are day-to-day stuff that I just do with small businesses that really just help them get through the life. And, with AI, there's a lot more now that we're doing that it's something that they're changing. Like the rules are changing. Uh, they're changing their minds and their attitudes towards this now, and I'm excited to explore how we can now integrate systems and build better vehicles for customers of these clients that we're working with to become more relevant to what's necessary today as we go through this transition of, again, horse to car.
So, Matt, that's one of the things that I find most exciting in the conversations that we've been having leading up to here is the potential for, the small business, the Main Street business to actually be able to leverage the AI tools in a way that is meaningful for them that may seem out of reach or may seem daunting for them if they most of the time people who own small businesses are working in the business rather than on the business and being able to grow it. So I think that's one of the things that Rima and I are really excited to work with you and Profit Engines to help raise awareness about this service that's available through your company. And because Rima and I do so much work with entrepreneurs and different kinds of founders, again, whether it's somebody who's just starting out or somebody who's looking to the next level of growing their business, expanding their market share, it feels like the solutions that they might need are inherently built in within profit engines. But one of the things I love about, the conversations with you and your team is the ability to really customize the solution and think about a very specific way to solve that problem as opposed to, here's a standard set of cookie cutter AI agents or AI tools that we're just going to issue to you.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think there's a big portion of why people are not currently using AI solutions, especially in the small business and even the mid-sized businesses. They're only understanding the basic surface area, like LLM
Mhm.
discussions, which are, oh, I'm going to use ChatGPT or Claude or whatever tool they prefer to do some writing or whatever. There's such a bigger difference when it comes to thinking about business operations and solutions and thinking through the entire infrastructure. And I will tell you, I've been doing this for a long time. And to this day, even my own customers have only implemented a 10% of what I'd like them to implement. It's
Wow.
because there's just such a learning curve to try and get people to understand how to transition either paper services that they have. I mean, I have a lot of clients that still just write stuff down, or even just old, antiquated systems that they've had. And most of these things are it's just what they've always used.
Mhm.
So, I could give you lots of examples of things where, we've had wins, but
Yeah,
the
I
big,
think our audience would love to hear some, real life use cases.
yeah,
Talked a little bit about what you heard on the podcast, but that's a third party, not you. Tell us
yeah,
a little bit about what you and your team have seen for your clients. Get our audience inspired.
yeah. Well, I think from like a ground up level, if you look at the basic block and tackle stuff, like if you looked at what's going on a daily basis with a customer, like they're just trying to get through life. They're
Mhm.
busy, their phones ring, they've got employees who may be out for the day, they've got to fulfill inventory, they've got to, respond in time. And so all these things kind of come up to like, hey, where's the biggest, when I come in, where can I put the biggest Band-Aid on? Like, what's going to be the most important thing? A lot of it's revenue and sales. Like, usually
Mhm.
that's the first
That
peel.
usually revenue seems to, fix a lot of issues, fix a lot of problems in businesses.
It does.
It just is what it is. Yeah.
And I'll give you some specific examples because I think they are the most like gotcha moments that
Mhm.
people could get excited about because it's like basic stuff that they could maybe grasp on.
Okay.
Um, so right here in my town, we have a company called Diamond Rock Water. They deliver 5-gallon jugs all over the place. They've got trucks running every single day. It's like stepping on an ant pile if you walk into this business. It's just a lot of stuff going on. They also do um, just pick up and delivery right at the store location, or they have multiple places to pick up these water gallon jugs, and they also sell coffee and other products. But anyways, the point is, um, I noticed because I use them as a customer. I called them on the weekend. No one picks up. And, I'm like, what do you guys do? Like, what happens? Like, well, we just switch the phone over at such and such 5 o'clock, and it just goes to voicemail, and we pick up the messages in the morning, and we start to, fulfill. I said, well, that's a really odd customer experience to have. Like you're just letting people leave voicemails. There's no like even a basic person would think you'd send it to a call center
Hmm.
where someone could pick up and say, "Hey, I got you. We'll take your order." But both the owners are probably in their 70s, and it's kind of like this is the way we've done it. This is the way we're always going to do it. Okay, whatever. So I said, well, why don't we just start with some basic stuff? Because if someone comes to the website at after hours and because they're trying to figure out like what you have for products, at least put the agentic AI on your bot. So we on your website. So we train the bot, we train the AI bot to learn all about the products, to learn about their systems, their structures, how it all works. So we got it trained up to a certain degree where it's relatively smart enough. And I literally, after I did that, a week later, I got a call from the president of the business, and he calls up because you would not believe what happened. That AI bot just closed the town of Alpine, New Jersey. I said, wow.
That's impressive.
I said, what do you think that's worth? He said, probably $5,000 to $10,000 a year. And if the customers stay on for 10 years, it's like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like there is an insane amount of money that was done closed without, literally anybody there. And so what the bot did was it had an intelligent conversation with the director of the services for the town of Alpine to get their schools fulfilled with development of a system where they wanted to have all this consistent flow of waters because this some other thing went out of business. Whatever happened, it happened. But what ended up really interesting was it sort of closed the account and then put that information into the CRM system that we built for them so that the next day when they came in, they saw the conversation and they called the customer back up and they said, thank you for, being interested. And the customer is like, yeah, we got your information last night. When we get started, when can we get the first delivery? So the reason why I'm saying this is that there was no belief. It was yeah, whatever. Just put it on there type of discussion. They're like, yeah, whatever, AI, I don't care. Just, yeah, if it makes something happen, that's fine. Now, guess what's happening this week? I want you guys to yeah,
Next
I want
level
you
of
guys to
the
now tune this bot to be able to say these things and those things and have these specials implemented and blah, blah, blah. Because one of the things that people don't realize is that on their website, if they have a lot of traffic on their website, especially like businesses that do stuff like what they do, which is it's cash and carry, it's a lot of back and forth, people seeing if they're open, whatever. There's a lot of traction because it's a local service business. Is that people are kind of lazy and they'll take the least, effort to get something done. So if there's a chat feature on a website now, chances are if it pops up and says, "Hey, can we help you just fulfill your order or whatever?" the person, 10% of the people will just start typing. And so if you have a capture mechanism there that will get the person involved in a conversation, not just saying, "Hey, give me your email and your phone number and we'll call you back." No, a real person or a real bot that knows more about the business typically than their internal employees, because their internal employees don't really remember much other than what happened the day before. But the reality is that that is a perfect example of a very simple solve that's producing revenue that doesn't really cost any money. I mean, I gave it to them as a favor for being a marketing customer of ours.
Mhm.
But this is stuff that, it's a couple $100 if you want to just put it on your website and it will produce revenue just by being there. So I think at the end of the day, that's just one very, very minor example of dozens of things that we're doing in this space.
Wow.
Goodness.
That's
So
a way to make somebody a believer.
absolutely. And Matt, you talk about AI agents the same way that people talk about hiring a dream team. So you got a closer agent, a workflow agent, an amplifier agent. So for someone who's listening, who has a very small business, it's a startup, maybe one or two employees, Which AI agent should they hire first and why?
Well, you're asking me a question that I tried to support as an answer before, which is what's the problem? Because I could give you what I would suggest, but that may not be their problem, right? Their problem may be we need someone to put out content on all of our website production. We need someone to do social media. Like that would be a question that I would say to the customer, like, what is your major malfunction? Like, what is the problem? Where are you bleeding? And then I could go back and, solve the problem. I'll give you another example because I think this is important. So I have another company that's working with us. They're a garage door company. They're out in Martinsville area. They've been around for a million years. So customers aren't revenue really isn't a problem, right? Revenue is not really a function of the issue of their concerns because they've got an installed customer base. It's more about managing the thousands of customers that they have over the many years that they've been in business. So one of the things they asked us to do, which I thought was interesting, is that they're again another company that's all older, 60-year-old owners, and everything's in paper, just like a lot of companies are. That they have some basic systems, but reality is that they take an order, they write it on a piece of paper, they stick it on a bulletin board. The driver comes and picks it up for the next day. The driver goes out, puts the garage door in, and installs it, takes a piece of paper, writes on it, sends it back brings it back in at the end of the day, and they fulfill the order through some basic, let's say, inventory systems. But they came to us and said, you know what we really need? We need a system that when the driver goes out, he has all of the parts that he has in his truck that he now needs to use to install whatever device that they're installing or whatever garage door they're doing or whatever repair they're doing. And he uses all these parts. And the problem we run into is that so the driver comes back at the end of the day, parks his truck, and then the next morning we have to go through the truck, find out all the missing pieces, put the pieces back in the truck, and make sure he has the SKUs, as they call them, in his truck so that when he goes out, he's not having to come back to the store 5 hours later, pick up something else, go back out and, finish the job because he didn't have it in his truck.
Mhm.
So what we implemented was something interesting, which was that we took all their SKUs, we put it in the system, and we electronicized their invoicing so that when they go to the location of the sale or the repair, they go through on their phone or on typically either that or on an iPad or an iPad like device, and they pop in what they're using. It goes back to a central repository that shows the inventory they used, so that when they come back in, they've already got the list of products and parts that they can now replace, and it takes them 5 hours less or whatever to fill these trucks up with the right parts. So that's like another sort of like easy thing to do. And a lot of this was tied together by using some AI strategy in the background to make it easy for not only the supply manufacturers who giving them the parts where we tied together the inventory, but on the front end to make the experience for the installer a lot easier. So it sort of automatically generates like, hey, if you did this, then you're going to have these typical parts. And again, very simple things, but to somebody who's in the business of trying to solve just getting hours of time that's wasted out of their schedule, it's another example of solving problems at different levels, not just sales, but operations as well.
Yeah, those are really good examples of the way that AI has been helpful for your clients. And, so much of the conversation around AI, as we've all seen, is about, you know, writing content or doing more kind of basic first level sorts of tasks, I would say. But, you know, the power really comes in when you have it as a team. Like Rima said, you have this, you're hiring a team of agents and having those agents work on the business, in the business, the day to day, but then also thinking about or having them help think about next steps and other potential areas of expansion, partnership, development for that business.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying every client's going to be a little bit different. So the answer to the question in the very beginning is it depends,
Mhm.
right? Because we're at a point now which is becoming very well, I'd say for me, it's an evident succession of the digital marketing agency world. We are now making our way towards the process of selling an entire digital marketing agency to a customer,
Mhm.
as in the agents, and then we just manage the agents, right? So there's a content agent, there's a Facebook agent, there's a Google pay-per-click agent, there's a um, introspective, like looking at the content for congruity agent. Like these things are going to come eventually. They're in certain stages of development because the human intervention is still here. There has to be someone overseeing things currently today. And it's just because there still is what I would call hallucinations throughout the entire infrastructure of all of these AI bots because they can only go to a certain degree. It's almost like they're trained to a certain degree to understand all of the things that you've inputted. But once it gets outside of the bell curve of the things you've inputted, that's when the human intervention goes. That's why I'm saying like one of the things that's important when we install these AI agents is that we're working with our clients to improve the efficiency scores and the complacency, issues that the AI runs into is that, it sometimes doesn't know the answer and will come up with something. And because we're monitoring that on a weekly basis with all these bots, we can actually improve the optimization of everything we're doing because we're actually seeing like all these different categories of things that we know now so that we implement the next bot with all those learnings and we go, here's all this stuff that we're going to um, prompt into these agents as part of a solution. So it depends on, again, the value of what we're trying to do is based off of the customer's concerns, but it's also based off of what they're willing to do to help us with making it smarter too, because it's not just us.
What's the typical ask? Like, what's a kind of usual ask or investment in time of the customer? I know it would be project specific, but give us some idea.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example because we had one um, this morning. We were talking about it. So we had a customer who said, "Hey, the agent is doing really well, but there's certain aspects it just doesn't know." And so what we did was we looked at all the conversations because all the conversations come into a central management tool. In fact, as you know, this company, high level, um, we use their CRM. We're a master reseller for them, and it's a tremendous product because it takes all the conversations from all channels. Meaning, if it's a Facebook conversation on a chat, or if it's a SMS or a phone call or a web chat, it all goes into one. So we can look at the customer's entire dialogue in every format, and then we can look at what the agent is saying back and forth to the customer and we can pick out parts where we want to have improvement. So usually it's us first looking at the like some basic things where we know, oh, that's not right or that's not right. But the investment time from the customer is usually us saying, here's the conversations we see that have got flags in them that we've looked at. Can you help us with what the responses would be? And really interesting, which has happened just like recently for everything is that when people actually see, because most people don't pay attention to this stuff, they're like, you're the agency, you go do it, right? But when we show them like, hey, this is your employee, because it really is at the end of the day, like this is what they're saying. Do you want them to say it better? And they're like, wow, like most of that's pretty good, but this part and that part. So once we get them involved, they actually spend more time looking at the stuff ourselves. So I'd say like maybe 20 minutes a month, maybe, with our clients, just, help clean up dialogue. But they're getting more interested, which is the fascinating part. So I'm seeing people like, because they see the revenue advantage. They're like, oh, wait a minute. Hey, if we can have them sell this instead of that, and here's the product that they should have mentioned, and here's the upsell they should talk about. Like all this becomes relevant because now it's like, well, just feed this employee the right things to say, and your chances of conversion could go up too.
Mm. So Matt, what I'm hearing you say is that AI can optimize a lot of things, but it can't, but not taste and judgment. And this is where the human being has to stay in the loop in these fully automated systems.
Today. Yep. Yeah, I honestly think that that is also going to shave away very quickly. The reason why I'm going to say that is because there's always going to be something that gets invented that's going to be like the next thing. Like again, last year we wouldn't have this conversation. It wasn't even worth the conversation. It wasn't worth anything, right? But now I'm thinking like, well, what is taste and judgment, right? And what is that? What is that really element of um the value of like considering certain things, right? It's usually heuristic, it's a historical perspective. There's all these things that come into play. And I think you're right to some degree. We're never going to find, well, I don't know if never is the right word, but it's sort of like we're going to live alongside. And I think that's the thing people have to understand is this is not taking your job. You're living alongside and you're trying to actually make the output the best experience for all people involved, whether it's the customer, operations, the client. Like there's all these things that should happen. So I think it's more like maybe the taste and the involvement of uh, perspective, maybe that's always going to be us anyways, and that we're just going to use tools as tools.
Well, it's definitely playing out in real time, and we all have, I don't know if it's the good fortune or the misfortune of having to adapt and predict in some ways where we're going to go and how far we're going to go and what are the levels of comfort each individual and each business has to bring in the tools and, what are the guardrails that they need to consider, in terms of access giving to the agent, and having those siloed maybe in the beginning until there is further proof or further, kind of security. Because we have seen some security issues arise with agents having, full access and going rogue, which, is something that I think keeps many of us awake at night. So, starting out probably with some siloed data or siloed tasks with the, review, revisit model that you talked about, Matt, for the time being, feels like the way forward that I would be comfortable, that I'm comfortable, versus taking a no participation approach, which certainly that's not anything that Rima and I, it's not in our DNA to not participate in, something like AI. But at the same time, giving it some parameters within which it could operate with our oversight and, you know, uh, review for now. Who knows?
Well, I'll bring up a good point because I think part of this is concerns around what is it saying? And when you get to medical, which is very interesting, now you have a whole sort of set of sequences you have to think about. You have HIPAA compliance, you've got access to whatever. And you're right. However, I think what's been interesting. So, in the case of one of our clients, uh, in a very large, let's just say, thought process, meaning lots of variables.
Mhm.
Um, we've inputted into a database every single conversation, every single YouTube video, every single thing that this doctor's ever done in his entire life, right? It literally like thousands and thousands of conversations, hundreds of YouTube videos, social media posts, everything. We inputted it all into a database. And so what we kind of came to the conclusion because of the medical, let's just say, sensitivity here,
Mhm.
is that the bot would say what the doctor would say and also back it up by linking to a topic that the client who's, let's just say, coming on board as a patient or whatever, that they could say, here's the exact, like, blah, blah, blah condition, blah, blah, blah result, and here's the link to the video where the doctor talks about it. Right. So, in that sort of like summarizes the problem summarizes the solution, and then summarizes where they can get the actual initial dialogue. And that's worked really well in supporting what I would consider the concerns around what is it saying, right? Because now you could say, well, it's actually just saying whatever the doctor would say, and here's what they said directly, so you can actually see it if you have concerns. And that was really an eye-opening thing for me, because what that did was it also made me think, well, wait a minute, is the employee better? Could they inference the 6,000 different videos at an instantaneous clip and find this piece of content that the doctor said? Are they even saying it to some degree? Are the customer service reps even, modeled enough to be trained enough to know what this doctor would say? So it really made me think, like, I actually think the agent would be better, because it has an inherent advantage because it's got the database embedded. So there is some thoughts around, like, our employees, especially in the medical field, because we obviously work with a lot of these guys, because my background is I've worked with hundreds of medical clients, but is the employee really a better resource than the agent? And there's a good question there. If you compare them, especially, if they're new, they're definitely not better. But even the more senior people couldn't remember, like, all these different conditional aspects, and what happens if you have X condition plus Y condition plus Z condition. What does that mean for the ramifications of this medicine? So there becomes a very interesting dialogue around, well, maybe we're in a position now where, again, it's a tool, and the tool itself might be sharper than the actual human. Uh, Again, there's a lot up for debate here, but time has tested over the last couple of months that we've been using this, is that the pickup rate is a lot quicker from a response, and that response is really what people want. They want an answer to their question, right, more than anything else. And a fulfilling response with a video backup has been a pretty interesting log in my records, as saying, well, check the box. Like, that's something that is going to be pretty interesting as we move forward, because now we're actually using the dialogue. We're not like making up summaries. We're actually using the dialogue.
And you're pointing to it.
Correct.
You're giving the evidence of the receipt.
Yeah. And now that doctor's thinking, well, I'm in this certain category of business. Like, maybe I could resell my brain to other doctors or other practices, and they could use it, and I could charge a gate fee for the tokenization of this. So it's like, well, okay, wow,
Interesting.
like, you're right. Like,
Right? Because he has this body of work, 6,000 videos,
yeah,
right? And so he's thinking, what if I make that available to other practitioners in my same field?
yes,
That's
and
thinking,
and
right?
I'm starting to see multiple people do this, where they're actually selling access to themselves electronically.
Oh, that's so
There's a
interesting.
guy, Dr. Brinkman.
Yeah.
I just saw it the other day. He charges $10 a month if you want to access his brain through an AI, which he's done the same thing. He's just basically put it all into a database.
And
And
is that available? Sorry, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but is that made available for other clinicians or just anybody?
well, there's two different models, right? So you could go and transfer it as a sort of white label approach to say to another practitioner, hey, we partner with this doctor. Here's his information if you want access to it. If you want to have that as part of your business, you could literally take it and just copy it and say, here's your white labeled version of this doctor's stuff, right? That's a model. The other model would be, well, just from a direct consumer standpoint, if the consumer wants this information and they just want to go and figure it out, whatever it might be, that they could go in and pay a gate fee and access it. So it's multi sort of tiered, but I think at the end of the day, what's mainly happening, as far as I can see from what I've been doing over the last couple of years now, is that the actual assist has been done in the background. Now, this is where I kind of find it fascinating. So there's a human answering on the front end. They're going to the database to find the information, and they're coming back and then repositioning it to the customer. That's the back end sneaker net that I'm seeing happen. slowly, it's sort of like there's a dividing line that's kind of slowly fading away. Well, why don't we just do it direct? And that's sort of, again, that's that human thing on the top. Like, do I use it as a tool, or does it do its own? And I think that barrier is going to disappear as we get more close to what you said before, which is about the taste and the
Mhm.
whole thing. Like, how do we get that to be close enough, or close to a point where the consumer doesn't really care? What they want is the answer. They want to be booked for that carpet cleaning on Monday at 3 o'clock when their wife is out, so that they don't have to worry about moving the furniture around. Right? It's like, are we looking for stability, or are we looking for answers? And there's always going to be a dividing line.
Wow. So much to think about.
Mm.
Yeah.
But one of the things that Rima and I are excited to share with our audience is our relationship and the ability to allow our audience and entrepreneurs, business owners to leverage the tools, some of the tools that you've been describing in this conversation, as well as other tools that, are yet to be discovered, or needs rather yet to be discovered, with the subsequent tools to help support them in their business. So that's something new for Rima and I with Yalla Now AI. And we hope that you will think about the words that Matt has said and how it might be applicable in your business, and then reach out.
Yeah, and there's so many things. I mean, there's dozens of examples that we have now in play. And don't think you're late to the game, because it's just beginning. And one of the things for businesses, especially, again, consumers are different because they're using these tools for a lot of writing and a lot of, day to day, let's just say, time saving things. But for businesses, you know, it's going to be a long march through this. It's going to be years and years and years of us explaining, integrating, taking little pieces, marching up a little bit. So don't feel like you're also late to the game. And part of it's just like asking questions, like, could it do this, or could I do that? And that's all we do. Literally, that's the conversation I have every single day. Is like, what can you guys do this?
Well,
And
one
then
of the
we
things
answer.
that one of the theses that Rima and I have is that there's going to be a huge influx of the portfolio career as a result of some of these AI tools and the changing workplace dynamics, and some of the jobs that exist today that might be morphed and changed, and then people wanting to have more agency, wanting to feel more in control of their time, of the projects that they work on, and really getting to that thing that lights them up. We've had several conversations about AI possibly being one of the unlocks that helps people really find that thing that lights them up. And so I'm really curious to see how that aspect of kind of entrepreneurship, workplace changes is going to play out. But I'm doubling down on that.
um, Menek, this is the perfect segue for what I was just about to ask Matt about
Okay.
things that light you up. I'm gonna have to ask you about your music. There is no way with that background that I'm not gonna ask you about this. So Matt, you're the lead guitarist, songwriter, and vocalist of Matt Kofi Band. You've opened for people like George Thorogood, Blackberry Smoke, 38 Special. So if your entrepreneurial journey with AI were an album, what would you call it?
Oh, it's very easy. Living Louder.
I love it. I
That
love
was
it.
my
That
last
was a
album.
really
So
I
quick
love it.
answer.
I
yeah,
love it. I love it.
yeah. Well, I was lucky enough to, again, as you said, I, I I'm blessed. I can't. That's the only way I can say it.
Mhm.
I've been connected to the right people as I've matured as a musician, and done the things that anybody in a let's just say non-professional, because I'm not a touring band. I'm a guy who's been doing this for a long time, and I don't play maybe 5, 10 times a year, but we've got great team members. I'm connected to a lot of really good people, producers and directors who are helping me with the output. And these are people in the industry, who are out there doing the touring. I'm doing the heavy lifting of actually helping them with some of their work, which is interesting. So there is a trade off. But yeah, I mean, again, what lights me up is actually looking at my Spotify numbers and seeing that somebody in Poland right now is listening to my song. You know, and that's kind of cool. Like, you know, we've gotten to a point where, you know, we've got some sort of global attraction, and you know, there's 500 people listening to our music every single day across the world, and that's great. And that to me is like proof. I'm not a cover band. Like that's one of the things that I would say was that we certainly do other people's material, but our stuff is out there and people like it. So I think that's kind of proof positive that, you know, creativity plus a little bit of support from some people who are very skilled in the industry, you know, you could do this stuff. And I'm proof of that. You know, I'm not some um incredibly talented guy. I'm just a guy who's put it together. And I have a little bit of this. I have like a little bit of a recipe of everything, and I've been able to put together a, you know, songwriting and put the people on my team together who are very talented in certain aspects, either playing, you know, guitar or bass or whatever. And it's been a fun experience, especially the last couple of years, as you know, we've been able to warm up some of these major acts, which have been my childhood bands or some of the bands that I, you know, listened to when I was a teenager. So it's interesting to see, you know, this whole thing move forward and how far it's gotten, just from the pure fact of the effort of putting the resources together.
Wow, that's like a childhood dream come true, right?
Yes, it absolutely is. And it's terrifying sometimes because you're in front of a lot of people, and sometimes that stage can look like it's 100 feet up in the air. So
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So that's the thing that lights you up, right? And the other thing that we love to know, Matt, is what is the fuel? What is your go-to snack that gets you powered through the day? Because I know you have long days and lots of, moving parts.
yeah, my secret sauce is coconut water. I
Ah,
literally like
that's a
drink
good
coconut
one.
water all day long. My wife thinks I'm a coconut because I'm like literally everywhere you go, there's these big boxes of coconut water all over the place. And it's something that I've done just because I know the value of like the electrolytes and um it fell just into my hands. I think one of those things where you go, like, what is the thing that I could have that has a little bit of calories? It's not like a sweet drink or anything like that, but it is a little bit sweet.
Mhm.
But also, it's like, you know, you feel like, okay, it's good for you. And I don't know, it became like a staple all of a
That's
sudden. And it's
great.
been like my meal now. Now I don't even eat till like later in the afternoon because I've been drinking coconut water all day. And it's like, okay, like I feel satiated. I mean, I'm not starving or anything like that, but it's good. It's good for you, and I highly recommend it if you're, you know, if you're gonna do some sort of sweet drink, do something that's good for you.
Yeah, I always have a case or two of the pink one. I forget the name of it on hand because I also find that it's just very refreshing and
Yep,
gives me a little pickup.
yep.
Okay, Matt. Now you know what's next.
Yes,
What's
Pet
in your
fish.
bag?
yes. What's in my
Tell us
bag?
what's in your bag.
Oh, so I think you're gonna laugh at this, because it's so true to what I do. Um, and I laugh at it too because it's sort of like it's just always around with me. I always have my gimbal in my bag. So I take my phone off, my my phone off my the back of this phone off. It goes on my gimbal, and I'm always going around to my customers and recording them. Whenever I see my customer, I'm like, you know what? I'm here. We're getting stories. We're getting anything you want. Like I just literally hold it up, and they know I'm coming. They literally hide sometimes
They see
because
it
they're like,
coming. They
I'm
know
not
what's
ready. I'm not
next.
ready. I didn't shave. I don't look good. I didn't put any makeup on. I'm like, too bad. We're getting content because that's the hardest thing for my customers is like they don't not want to do it, but they don't necessarily want to do it. So it's
Yeah.
like, how do I get that done? And so, especially because we have a lot of local customers right here in northern New Jersey, I just always have the gimbal in my bag. I literally walk with it in my pocket. They can't see it, and then I just pull it up and go, let's talk about some stories. And that really has helped me actually with great content that has become parts of their social profiles and parts of their YouTube channel where they just got sort of surprised and they started talking and I was like, "You see? It's great. This is the best thing is because it's conversational stuff. It's not set up to be like, we're here, we're going to talk about our business. No, it's just, you're just talking about what happened today. And that stuff just cuts real well on social.
Well, it's
Yeah,
authentic,
Yep.
right?
absolutely.
It feels in the
Yep.
moment real because it is.
Yep. And it's me also prompting. And I found that that was the real thing that was the antithesis of getting content from our customers, which is that I literally just have to prompt them through the entire infrastructure of a conversation. Because when I do that, then the answers that come back are just sort of like, they're they're specific to what I want them to say too, meaning I'm pointing them in the right direction. Because I find if I ask customers to give me content on their own, sometimes they just kind of, it's Dullsville. And I kind of poke them a little bit.
I get it spicy.
Yep. Yep. Make them
Turn up
make
the
them
heat.
think on their feet. And that's
Yeah.
when things come out that sound real, authentic, as you mentioned before. And it's actually useful.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, it's been so great talking with you and hearing about some of the real use cases that your clients have experienced. And Rima and I are excited to, partner with you, to work with you as affiliates, and hope that any of our audience who reaches out to Matt will have all of the access information linked in the show notes. But let us know. We'd love to hear how you're actually using some of Matt's services or benefiting, the business benefited from those services. So I'm really looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah, and make sure you also realize it's a lot of fun. I mean, this is really cool. When we put stuff in, you'll be like surprised about how the smiles start to pop up because people are starting to go, okay, this isn't some animated robot that's going to take over the world. It's going to make me money. Yay.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thanks for tuning in, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye bye.